Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's News In-Depth. Tom Slivick here with Chief Administrative Officer Chuck Iley. How are you doing, Chuck?
Doing great, Tom.
And you're the Chief Administrative Officer for the
Amador
county,
yes.
Amador County. Okay, I'm really glad you could join us today. And we're going to be talking about a proposition that I don't know if a lot of people know about yet. I haven't heard a lot about it at all, and it's Proposition 31. And so it's kind of a it's kind of a sleeper that's making it on the ballot, or it's already in the ballot. First of all, let me ask you, as a CAO, how did you come to get interested in this proposition?
Well, the RCRC, the Regional Council of Rural Counties, has been working to come up with a position to recommend to the counties, and as such, our board has actually been discussing, or is getting ready to discuss, a position on this initiative. So as such, I've been familiarizing myself with it so I can speak intelligently when the supervisors ask questions. The supervisor as a whole, the board as a whole, is going to be discussing it next Tuesday to formally take a position. So so they've each been doing research into it, and I have as well.
Okay, and the proposition reads: State Budget, State and Local Government Initiative, Constitutional Amendment, and Statute. And it's pretty ambitious.
It does. It covers a whole bunch of different areas. It focuses mostly on the budgeting process and whatnot, but there are other areas where they venture into allowing locals to have more control over the services they provide. Too. Okay. So we can go through it one by one if you like. Okay,
and interestingly, it seems like there's something in here for everybody. I think they kind of write propositions that sound that way, and I read a lot of, not a lot of, but I did do some research on the internet, and quite a few of the reporters feel that it's sounds like a good idea, but it could be dangerous as well, or not go far enough. And why don't we talk a little bit about it, what it is? Why don't we just take the talking points and go down and talk a little bit about it. First of all, establishes a 2-year state budget cycle. That sounds pretty good.
That is probably the most noticeable effect of this proposition. The state would go to a 2-year budget cycle. Right now they're on a 1-year budget cycle. So what they would do is they would have a 2-year budget with a 1-year correction.
I wanted to say, since it takes them 2 years to come up with a 1-year budget cycle, this might be good for them.
It might be better, it might be worse. Maybe it takes 4 years to get that 2 years done. I don't know, but with the 2-year budget cycle, they'd have a correction after 1 year, the mid-year correction.
Okay.
And then it would go on. So at least from a county perspective, we would know what we would be looking at for 2 years out. Right now, particularly with the triple flip money we've been trying to get back, it would be good to know 2 years out whether or not we're going to be getting that funding back or not. So I would certainly be in favor of this.
Interesting thing, though, about government, it usually doesn't move until there's like a big crisis. That, you know, would you recognize a crisis if it was 2 years off?
It is tough, especially times like this when 1 month the economy's up and 1 month the economy's back down again. So there's no trending in one direction. So we've been kind of flat. It's tough to plan for 2 years out.
Okay, the next thing sounds pretty good, too. I'll read it. Prohibits legislature from creating expenditures of more than $25 million unless offsetting revenues or spending cuts are identified.
Well, that's the old, if you spend out of one hand, you've got to take from another hand. And it does sound like a good idea. They can't go and say, we're going to go spend $100 million to create this new program unless they know where that funding is going to come from. Unfortunately, the state budget is loose enough that they usually find some projected increases in revenue. You know, just simply saying tax revenue is going to go up, property taxes are going to rise, and they will find it somewhere. So it doesn't necessarily cure the ill, I don't think, but it does sound like a good idea.
So it sounds like a good idea. Basically, you know, we kind of have that for if a developer wants to put in a development, he has to identify his water source. Of course, that goes through a process of sequence. People get to look at that, so it can't be, something we made up. Well, Joe over there said he won't use some of the water, so we could use it, and somebody else will throw in a little bit here and there. It's pretty set in stone. Do you think it has hard enough teeth to make that work?
That's the drawback, is that there's always the state always balances their budget through projecting increase in taxes or fees, or whatever it is that they're going to project is going to increase that will cover whatever deficit. That's how they did it this past year. In the end, the projected increases don't surface. So when they're not realized, then they go back into panic mode and fix the budget. They'd be doing that again still, even with this portion.
Okay, before we go a little bit farther, let's talk about the group that's proposing this. Do you happen to know their name offhand?
It's California Forward.
Okay,
and
California
that's about
Forward.
all I know about it. Yeah, I haven't done a lot of research into that one, but
a lot of times you can tell sometimes where you might yourself. Myself feel where I would be positioned on the bill when I know who's for it and who's against it. I didn't notice a whole lot of against this. There is a lot that seems like, I believe you said
I've noticed a number of unions
public unions might not like this.
Yeah.
However, it only said that the people that are against it have raised $100,000 so far from an article that I've read, compared to the $5 million that has been put together so far for advertising the good, or to forward this movement.
Yeah, that's one that I don't know a lot about as far as where they're getting their funding from. I do know that a number of the unions have come out against it. RCRC is relatively ambivalent against it, or towards it right now, because as we get more into the other effects of this bill, you'll see it's not all obviously good.
In other words, everybody's trying to analyze it a little bit and see how it could help, how it could hurt.
Well, it's got so many pieces to it. They've stuck some good things in there, and they've stuck some bad things in there, and you got to figure out what you want with the overall bill. Okay,
so and I'd like to point out too, I went on Howard Jarvis's website, and I found that they have no position on it. There's nothing written on this either at this time. So did this bill just come together to where people are just now kind of finding out about what's in it?
I believe that it went through the signature process, and they got approved. I'm not sure what the dates were on that, but it is in our area of view right now, and we're trying to take a position.
Okay. And it came out of a think tank here. Maybe by the time I get back from the break, I'll be able to look at some of these papers and come up with where it was developed. And we can talk a little bit more about it. We can say it permits the governor, it's really interesting, to cut budget unilaterally during declared fiscal emergency if the legislature fails to act.
And that is...
Wow.
That's another one that is a major change, because the governor could declare that emergency and can cut the budget to
almost makes him imperial.
It does. It's very king-like, as it were, to cut the budget as he chooses without the regard to the legislature, and that causes some concern. Now, he can't increase the budget; he can only cut. So that does limit his power to a certain extent, but yeah, that does cause concerns.
All right, and it's happening at a time, I'll just have to point out, as a time where we seem like we have a government in, here in California that's not fond of cutting.
That's very true, and that's why it might be good to get the knife, because right now, in somebody's hands, because right now making any cut seems to be impossible.
But I don't think I noticed anywhere in there where it says, but you have to, you have to cut and you have to achieve these budgetary goals.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't require him to cut anything in particular, but it just gives him the power if he chooses to wield it.
Okay, so I might just point out, in a safe, so-called democratic safe state here like California, maybe the Republicans will never get a chance to cut anything.
that is a concern. Yeah, that it is held. In
Okay,
one.
well, we're going to go on to some other parts, because there is some interesting things in here where some power comes to the local governments, and that might be, certainly something you've read up on and have some insight into that. It says here that decreased state sales tax revenue is about $200 million annually, with a corresponding increase of funding to certain local governments, and that would be probably the impact fund on California. $200 million. Is that, where does that money, $200 million, how is that lost?
That's
you have about
cost.
a minute to answer that.
Well, we'll talk in a little bit about the impact to local programs, because locals have a lot more control over their programs, but in order to get that control, they have to put a plan together, and there is funding available for the local governments to put together that plan. And this is the $200 million that would be lost to the locals.
Okay, and that sounds like a strange concept here. I've been sitting here for 20-some years, 23 years, but looking at the news process, and the state government doesn't like to give the local government much control of any of the programs.
Well, that's very true, and that's what we. That's one of the good things that we see.
So there's a lot of tempting things in this proposition. Stay with us. We'll be talking about it more when I return from the other side of the break. You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN.